What is going on, everyone? It's your guy, Cole Jackson, back here on Road Graders. And folks, we are back. Man, this feels good. I haven't uploaded a video since May. It's been a great start to the summer. I hope all of you guys out there are having a great summer with your friends and loved ones. Hope everyone had a great July 4th or Canada Day if you're joining me up here in Canada. But it's around the corner. It's almost time for Ravens football. Rookies reported yesterday, I believe, and the vets are back in on the 22nd, which is next Tuesday. So it's time for us here to start kind of going through, getting ready for training camp, taking a look at the depth chart, seeing who stuck around after mini camp, what undrafted free agents are still around from the rookie camps, and take a look at some of the position battles. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on. Some of the positions with locked-in starters we'll talk a little bit about, like quarterback. Obviously, we don't need to have a QB1 conversation, but we'll highlight a little bit on Lamar Jackson before we kind of dive into it. But we're going to start today with the skill positions. We'll talk O-line tomorrow or Friday, whatever day that comes out. And then Monday, Tuesday, we'll do the front seven and the secondary, really focusing on those key position battles and where I guess some of the question marks are, because this is one complete football team. I feel really good about where the Ravens roster is at this point, but there is still a few question marks that the team may still address, and we'll talk about that specifically with the safety position. So sit back, relax. We're back. Looking forward to it. Drop a comment down below. Let me know how everyone's doing out there. Hit that like button if you guys are looking forward to that. And a big thank you to our sponsors of this series. Talking about you over there at One Bone. You can go over and check out One Bone at the link down below. Use promo code ColeJackson15. You'll get 15% off. This is clothing inspired for the offensive line. They are big sponsors of O-Line Masterminds. You can see the O-Line Masterminds just had their clinic. Everybody was wearing One Bone. Go over, check it out. I absolutely love it. I have a ton of their bullet tees. Just great clothing. Look good, feel good, play good, all that good stuff. Let's dive into it, starting with the offense, taking a look at the skill position. So like I said, not much of a conversation needs to be had here about the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson, when healthy, will be the QB1 until he retires, and hopefully he retires in the purple and gold and black. I don't want to see him anywhere but here. But I did want to talk a little bit about Lamar because, you know, when it comes to the regular season, the question really remains, what does Lamar Jackson have left to prove? And the answer is really nothing, you know, and I spent a little bit of time looking at his stats from 2019 because I remember the conversation in 2019 being around his touchdown and interception percentages because he was so unbelievably efficient in 2019. He had a 9% touchdown percentage and a 1.5% interception percentage. And you kind of saw the sustainability in the next few years. Now, some of that obviously linked to the wide receiver room. Some of that obviously linked to the Greg Roman offense before Todd Monken got in here. You saw those numbers. So I'll go TD percentage, interception percentage. So it went 6.9, 2.4, 4.2, 3.4, 5.2, 2.1. So kind of the key takeaway there is the touchdown percentage really dropped. But one thing to note is, though, even though the interception percentage didn't, stabilize, it never shot up. And that really speaks to how Lamar Jackson protects the ball. It's one of the most underrated parts of his game. Consistently puts balls in the position that only his guys can catch. I don't think it gets enough love. I try and focus on it when we're looking at film breakdowns. I find he's one of the best in the business at placing that ball out of harm's way. And so obviously we'll want to see that transition with the rest of the offense to the playoffs. But what Lamar Jackson, what does he have left to prove? Comes in 2024 and he returned an 8.6% touchdown percentage and a 0.8% interception percentage. First quarterback in NFL history to have 40 plus touchdowns and less than 4 interceptions, or 4 or less. Even if you go look at Tom Brady's insane 2007, he had more touchdowns, but he still threw 8 picks. But if you look at his percentages, he had an 8.7 and a 1.4. So very much in line with Lamar Jackson's, but Lamar Jackson's interception percentage better. And that comes off a year in which Lamar Jackson threw the most pass attempts of his career. So just, great efficiency in the air, and that's really what I'm looking to continue. Now, one thing that's interesting is The Ravens went out and for the first time in a very long time, probably since we had RG3, got a competent backup quarterback, and Cooper Rush. Now, Cooper Rush is one of those guys where he's not going to blow the doors off. He's not going to be a starter in this league. What you want in a backup quarterback, I've been always weird about backup quarterbacks because I always look at it as if Lamar Jackson goes down, this team's not, winning a Super Bowl. That's just my perspective. I know a lot of people disagree with me. But like if he goes down for a significant amount of time, that Super Bowl just isn't happening unless he's returning for the playoffs or whatever. That being said, you do want a competent quarterback that can either get you through a stretch, get you through a game if needed, especially if Lamar has to go take a dump in the back. And that's really what Cooper Rush, I think, has been pretty solid at. He saw significant time last year going 4 for 4 as a starter. Another guy that I thought, overall did a pretty good job at protecting the ball. He had a 1.6 interception percentage in those 8 starts last year. He threw 12 touchdowns. That translated to a 3.9% touchdown percentage. Nothing crazy, not overly good, but protecting the football and being able to move the ball, that's what you want to see. And that's what I thought Cooper Rush did in a pretty challenging spot last year when Dak Prescott went down. So that's something that I think is a very, very positive. Obviously, back in 2022, he went 4-1. Again, protected the ball really well, 5 touchdowns to 3 picks. Not a guy that's going to come in and throw a ton of touchdowns, but I think a guy that can manage the game for you with a Derrick Henry style run game, which is what I think the Ravens can do in that situation. So I see this as a situation where they probably go into the roster with Jackson and Rush on their 53. It kind of leaves that third quarterback spot. You put Devin Leary on the practice squad. I don't see Leary challenging Cooper Rush at all. I think it's Lamar 1, Cooper Rush 2, pretty locked in. I think this quarterback picture is very clear, and the Ravens are being led out the gate with a QB1 that is going to challenge for MVP again. It's still insane to me that he didn't win last year, especially when you look comparing the numbers to 2007 Tom Brady was just absurd to me. He just was that good last year. Whatever. It's over. It's done with. Moving on, taking a look at the running back room. So similar to quarterback, there's no challenge at the top of this running back depth chart. Derrick Henry came into Baltimore, had the wash label. Insane to me. We'll talk about this a little bit more when I get to DeAndre Hopkins. But if you go back and actually watch Derrick Henry in his last few years in Tennessee, I just didn't see the lack of a step. Like he was in a bad team, bad offense, bad situation, and it's very hard in today's game to be a lead running back with no pass game. And then he comes into Baltimore with not just a pass game, but a Lamar Jackson pass game, and you saw what Derrick Henry did. Absolutely absurd. Not just consistently moving the chains, but the big play ability. How many times do you rip off 30, 40, 50-yard runs for touchdowns, those toss plays, all that good stuff that we covered on this channel last year. Derrick Henry's coming in as an RB1, top guy in fantasy, all the fun storylines. The Baltimore Ravens have the best quarterback running back combination in the NFL. Can't wait to watch them go out there and do it. Now, where things get a little bit more interesting, Justice Hill last year, a guy that, think back to 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, Justice Hill was on the outside looking in camp, and credit to Justice Hill. I ate my words on him big time. He stuck on this team by becoming a big time special teams player about 3 years ago. And then he was able to get running back reps, and he did it the right way. He earned his time. He played special teams, and he did well. He played physical. And now you saw last year when he had to step into some big moments, no Keaton Mitchell, Rasheen Ali didn't really come in and do anything. Justice Hill had to step up, and he did a damn good job. His pass protection has improved, being able to be that kind of third down running back, really good compliment to Derrick Henry. So credit to Justice Hill, a guy that I thought carved out a really nice role last year. And I think what's going to be interesting is how the Ravens manage Justice Hill and a healthy Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell came back last year, didn't look the greatest, but we've seen this time and time again, not just on the Ravens, not when you look at a guy like J.K. Dobbins or other guys that have come back from knee injuries. It can sometimes take them a little time to ramp up a couple games or a stretch of a year. And I think that's what we saw with Keaton Mitchell. He's coming into camp now. He's going to have a full camp, build his confidence. He's going to feel more comfortable on that reconstructed knee. And I think Keaton Mitchell if he can get back to being that splashy playmaker, I think we have a very fun complement to Derrick Henry. And then the way that complements Justice Hill is that third down back. Now you have a nice trio of complementary skill sets. And again, I see this 1-2-3 room really where the battle is it's Justice Hill or Keaton Mitchell and how you manage their snaps. Do you bring Keaton Mitchell in as kind of that hook to the Derrick Henry jab, and then you have Justice Hill taking on the pass protection, pass game, that sort of thing? Or does Justice Hill earn enough of a enough of a role as being that hook guy that he was last year? Personally, if it's me, with what Keaton Mitchell put on film 2 years ago, I gotta be looking for those spark plays, because a defense being worn down by Derrick Henry to come out with a guy like Keaton Mitchell that is half his size and as fast and lightning fast as Keaton Mitchell, it's just such a different show. It's going from that fastball to a changeup, and that's what I really like, and it allows Justice Hill to then really settle into that third down back role. Focus on his pass protection, focus on his pass catching. We'll still get his looks. We'll still have opportunities to make plays. And then what you're looking for Keaton Mitchell is just to be that splash play guy, to come in, spell Derrick Henry, get both of them on the field in some funky combinations that they could do, with him out of the slot on end arounds and that sort of thing. I think there's a ton of opportunities here for Todd Monken to get creative. So those three are really at the locked. If it's me, I think once we get into it, I would have Keaton Mitchell as RB2 with Justice Hill as an RB2B, really solidified in that third down role and that pass down role. And that's no disrespect to Justice Hill. That's just what I think Keaton Mitchell can do because of that combination with the skill set change to Derrick Henry. So I'll be interested in your guys' thoughts on that. Drop it down below. Not trying to disrespect Justice Hill. That's just how I would play it. Rasheen Ali, a guy that when if you guys watched my film breakdown back when he was a rookie, I didn't love his college film. And then he came into the NFL, and I just don't really see it. He'll have an opportunity to come out. He's going to get a ton of looks in preseason. I don't really expect Henry, Hill, or Mitchell to really play a ton in the preseason. Maybe we'll see some Mitchell trying to get those ramp-up reps to get him healthy. But I think this is an opportunity for Rasheen Ali to come into preseason and be a bell cow. You got Marcus Major in here. You also have Luke Scott as a fullback who's just going to come in and compete with Ricard. I do have Ricard under tight end here. That's just how I view him now. But Major, I just can't see pushing Ali. The big question is whether the Ravens will keep 4 running backs. If they go 2 quarterbacks, I think it's more likely they'll keep 4 running backs just because of some of the injury piece there with Keaton Mitchell. And maybe they don't want to expose Rasheen Ali on the practice squad with how running backs can go down across the league. But if they need to keep another player and Rasheen Ali isn't able to show some of that special teams ability, they could very well just go 3 running backs and Ali's on the outside looking in. It's really hard to see Rasheen Ali earning a role on this team just with how things are set up. But Major Jr. is also going to get a big opportunity. I expect the Ravens will probably bring in a veteran just to kind of be a camp body and take some of those snaps. Someone that could maybe be on practice squad as that kind of emergency backup. There's a ton of veteran running backs out there. So that's one spot I think they could add. Just vet minimum won't impact the cap. So that's really how I see the running back room. Really, I see the big question is between Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill for that solidified RB2 role, but I see all 3 guys having a major role this year in that running back room. Switch over to tight end. I think we might have a position battle here, folks. Mark Andrews. Good looking guy. I'll give him that. But a tough end of the year. I was there in Buffalo. I watched that drop. It was hard. I watched that fumble. It was about 15 yards to the left of me. I was 3 rows from the field, and it broke my heart. It sunk my heart. I haven't forgotten about it. I haven't really forgiven him yet. But I think there's a bit of a decision that needs to be made here. Mark Andrews going into the last year of his contract. From everything I heard through the grapevine, they were shopping Mark Andrews. They weren't getting the compensation. They were getting 4th round pick compensation. They wanted 3rd or better because the value to the Ravens this year, it's have a guy that's been a Pro Bowl all-pro tight end or a 4th round pick next year. If you get into that kind of 3rd round where you can swap a pick, you get a top 100 pick, it's a little bit of a different formulation. But the question is, what do we do with Isaiah Likely? Because when he's had to step in, and even when they're going 2 tight end sets, Likely is a playmaker, and there's so much left to unearth there. Not only that, they're going to have to figure out an extension there. I think most likely Mark Andrews will go to free agency next year. They get a comp pick for him, and then Isaiah Likely gets paid to be, tight end 1. I think that's the most likely outcome. But what do we do in the interim? We do know that the Ravens will consistently use 2 tight end sets. That's been Todd Monken's kind of go-to. We saw it in his Georgia offenses when he had Darnell Washington and Bowers. And, now we've seen it under the Ravens with Andrews and Likely. And not only that, we've seen combinations with Kolar and Likely, Andrews and Kolar, Ricard and Likely, Ricard and Andrews, where he's lined up as a tight end. So 2 tight end sets are going to be a thing. So it's not necessarily the playing time, but there's only so many targets to go around. So how do you prioritize Likely versus Andrews? I think what we're going to see throughout this year, I think coming out the gates, I think Andrews will just kind of be tight end 1, kind of the way it was last year. Targets will be spread, Likely still going to be involved. I think Andrews will still be heavily involved. It's going to be about how that transitions through the year. And I think the Ravens are going to be more incentivized to try and get Likely involved. Now, I know some will look at it and say they'd be decentivized to get him involved because that might drive up his contract value. But this isn't just about contracts. Obviously, contracts are super important, but it's also about winning. And Isaiah Likely looks like the kind of guy that rises to the occasion and can be that player in the playoffs that they need to be reliable. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. If Andrews would have been gone, I actually would have been okay with it because I'm a big believer in Charlie Kolar. Charlie Kolar is a guy that, just like Ed Oliver did here, has developed his blocking and just become a complete player. It's the way the Ravens have been able to take these vertical receiving tight ends and make them blockers and make them complete players. It's been incredible to watch. Some of the best tight end coaching I think we've seen in the NFL, just with that ability to create these complete players. And Kolar has shown it. And I think this kid has a super high potential as a tight end too. And so I'm very ecstatic about how they can get him involved. And now we have a very deep tight end room because we also have Pat Ricard, who can do that inline work, help out in pass protection, do so much for this team. And he's done it aligning as a fullback and as a tight end. So they have about 4 deep there. I'm not going to talk too much about Mitchell Payton and Pitts. No disrespect to those guys. I hope they have great camps. I hope they get to make plays in the preseason. They'll probably get a ton of playing time, but the 4 tight ends on this roster are locked, in my opinion. So it's really going to be about how do the Ravens manage Andrews and Likely, and how does Kolar continue to carve out a role for himself. Getting into the wide receiver room, this is the most complete wide receiver room the Ravens have had since 2012. I genuinely believe that. I know a lot of folks aren't that high on DeAndre Hopkins after a down year. He's kind of on that watch, right? And that's what Derrick Henry was on. I don't think he's going to be as impactful as Derrick Henry, but when I went back and watched his tape, I felt pretty good about the impact he could come in here and make. I still see a very good player there. I thought he was in a weird situation in Tennessee, and I think a lot of people forget that in training camp last year, he was working back from an injury. And so now he's healthy, he's ready to go. So it's entering training camp with that full health, I think, is a big advantage. And now the Ravens have a trio of wide receivers in Hopkins, Bateman, and Flowers that, much like the running back room, I think are very complementary skill sets. Hopkins is a guy that can, play above the rim, play in contested catch situations, be a great route runner, great hands, do it all. Rashad Bateman's kind of your finesse route runner, can play a little bit in the deep game, but the separation ability, his release package, we've seen it. It's pretty solid. And Zay Flowers is just a human joystick out there. It's absolutely, thrilling to watch. So when they get into 11 personnel and they have Hopkins as your X, Bateman as your Z, Flowers in the slot, suddenly your 11 personnel with your 3 wide receivers looks pretty good. The big question is, what can DeAndre Hopkins bring to this offense? And is he going to be able to, carve out some of that ability that he had a couple years ago when he was still one of the elite wide receivers in this league? I don't know if he's going to get back to that, but I still think he can be very effective and add an element to this offense that has been missing. Then we look into the back end. Tylan Wallace, a guy that anytime you need him to step up, that's what he does, right? He comes and he steps up. And a guy that can play special teams. So he's really carved out that wide receiver 4 role. And I'll say wide receiver 4 because he's going to be active on game day given the return ability. And I should talk about that with Keaton Mitchell because of his kick return abilities. That's going to actually really impact LeJohntay Wester. We'll talk about him in a minute. But Tylan Wallace also has that return ability and the special team gunner ability. So I have him as my wide receiver 4. Then I have under him is Tez Walker. And this is a guy that's getting it's funny. The Ravens for years in the 2010s thrived, and I mean the media thrived on picking the next big camp guy. Remember Jeremy Butler? Who were some other guys? Jeremy Butler was a big one. Tim White, guys that were just having insane camps, and the Ravens fans were like, we may have a wide receiver 2, we may have a wide receiver 3. The difference is the Ravens have built a wide receiver core around Flowers and Bateman, and now we're talking about these camp guys for that wide receiver 4-5 role, and that's what Tez Walker is kind of in. He got a ton of rave reviews. I think there's a ton of potential there, especially as a deep threat. But he's got to show it, right? He's got to show it beyond just what he can do in practice, and he'll have every opportunity to do that. A guy that I think will play a ton in the preseason and can really earn his stripes, and I'm very excited to see him play. I liked his tape. I like what he brings to the offense. I like guys that can stretch the field when you have a vertical backfield that the defense has to cover, and Jackson and Henry, guys that can get deep and take the top off. We've seen the Ravens trying to do that with Rashad Bateman. He's not that true deep threat. He's more of a kind of finesse route runner. So Tez Walker has a lot of, upside there with that, that skill set, that ability to stretch the defense and actually be able to take the top off. When you look at LeJohntay Wester, a lot of folks love him. Don't blame you guys. I mean, he's a fun player, but I really see an uphill battle for him to make this team. And I know it's rare for a rookie not to make this team. The Ravens have always prioritized maintaining rookies, but at the same time, that was very much an Ozzie Newsome thing. Eric DeCosta hasn't had that same type of loyalty to his rookie class. Obviously, you want to keep your rookies, but you look at the Tyler Beatty, the running back they had a few years ago. They didn't mind him, not staying on the team. There's been a few guys in recent years, not a ton, but I don't see him safe, and I don't see him safe because Wade's coming back. You guys will remember Wade from training camp last year, preseason last year, made plays. And I think he can go out there and do it again. And I think he can also bring, kind of that backup slot receiver role. And Dayton Wade, sorry. Couldn't think of his first name. And I also wouldn't sleep on Anthony Miller, a guy that actually made some plays in that Buffalo game in the playoffs. So I think there's a couple guys there that could really push Wester. Now, Wester is going to have that punt return ability. If he can show that in the preseason and in training camp that he's a sure punt returner, then not only is he looking at, playing on game day, but he's going to, maintain on the 53-man roster. But there are other guys like Tylan Wallace and Keaton Mitchell that can also do some of that returning piece too. So it's going to be really interesting how they manage. I'm not going to jump into Malik Cunningham, Keith Kirkwood, Banks and Gilroy. No disrespect to those guys, but this is just an uphill fight. I really don't see a chance in hell they're making it. I think the wide receiver 6 spots, a battle between Wester and Wade pending injury. Keith Kirkwood would kind of be that 6th, or actually, no, I'd say he's probably 7th. I think Anthony Miller would be the next guy up. If they need to, like if an injury happens and they need to put someone on IR, God forbid. So that's really how I see this kind of wide receiver room shaking out. I really see the wide receiver 1 through 5 spot really locked. I think you got Flowers, Bateman, Hopkins, Wallace, Walker. They're locked in 1 to 5, looks very strong. And then I see a battle between Wester, Wade, and Miller for that wide receiver 6 spot. Special teams really being a key deciding factor there. So we'll jump into, I'm going to do the O-line either tomorrow or Friday, see what time when I get it out. And then we'll do the defense next week before giving my final 53-man prediction going into this. But drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of the overview of the offensive skill positions. Let me know what you see as, sort of the biggest battles. And, drop a comment down below because I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to have you guys back here. I'm looking forward to it. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Peace out, everyone.